Hey, Fairy Dust, welcome to the screening room. Hey, Liz. Carrie, where are you going? All right, you catch the next one, Carrie. Hey, Earth, what's going on? I'm excited to get this one done. Let me show y'all. Can I just show y'all something? The little grip of insanity. I have my Murdoch trial notes. Murdoch trial notes. We'll just go through them. It's crazy. Detailed. I've got my Murdoch piece of paper notes that I just grabbed. Hold on. I'm not done. A state of disorder. And then I have in this little drawer right here is the murder mystery notebooks that I use. I love you too, Carrie. You got your man with you. Go lay around with your man. Snuggle up. And out of that notebook came all this shit. Hey, Hope. Hey, watcher. So we'll take a break from all the and just not forget, please, my handy dandy envelopes. Oh, where some notes from tonight on here. We're gonna take a break from regular drama in the community, and we're just gonna go back to 1922 Hollywood. My favorite place to be. And we will go through some this is one interesting case here. It helped ruin a lot of careers. It ruined old Hollywood. We spend all day at church tomorrow. Oh, you're going to spend all day at church tomorrow. Oh, Carrie. I do. State of disorder, I do. And I've read two books about this. One is called The Cast of Killers. And there was a director, very sassy, a great director named King Vidor. I'll have to put up one of his movies. Can't remember. I think it's called Side Street. It takes place, and this is in the early 30s. It takes place on the stoop and sidewalk of a building in New York. And you would think, and I'll explain later what code and pre-code movies are. It's pre-code movie. And like I said, it just takes place on a sidewalk in front of at a stoop in front of a building. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. So King Vidor, and he worked, I guess, with Taylor back in the day. He was a silent film director and on up into the talkies a little bit. So they were getting ready to knock down the El Dorado bungalows where William Desmond Taylor lived and was murdered. And he was really interested in it because, like I said, it ruined Hollywood. It ruined some big careers, huge careers. And he was fascinated with who did it. Everybody thinks they know who did it. Oh, thank you, Carrie. I decided we're going to do something different, so I had this pulled over, but I don't know. It's gonna go back and forth. But he started to do research on it. Well, he passed away, and I can't remember how the author of Cast of Killers got all of his notes. He had him in an office, and the guy went in and got his notes and started to investigate it himself. Obviously years later. And it's Al Dorado, not El Dorado. No, wait a minute. I might have that all wrong. Hold on. I say it all the time. It's Al Dorado, so it's all one word. Hey, London, girl, how you doing, baby? Anyway, so he wrote The Cast of Killers. And they pretty much name the killer. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You'll figure it out by the end of this, even though this is an unsolved mystery, unsolved murder. But it ain't that hard to figure out. He wrote that book. And then we have a book called Tinseltown. What was it? Mayhem, morphine, and something. Very good book. Very good book. It's about the same thing. And I'm going to list a couple of books through this that are really good if you want to, because I'm not going to be able to fill you totally wholly in on everything. And when we're going to go through the careers that this helped end, and we're going to go through the careers that in from 1920 to 1930, the scandals that broke Hollywood. They just broke them. It broke. It couldn't. We had by then you had not like it was kind of like National Enquirer. You had it like, okay, I'm gonna speak up. And they would. This is before studios had fixers, and I've told you what fixers are. Fixers show up when a star kills somebody, gets arrested, whatever, and they fix it because the studio can't afford it. Fixers would show up before the cops did. And that's where I think if y'all were with me when we discussed Jean Harlow and her husband, Paul Byrne, the fixers got there. Hey, Hondo, AC Hay. Got there before the police did, way before the police did. So this is before studios had fixers. This is why studios have fixers, these people, these stars. So I know I hate to just get rolling, but I just don't want to keep anybody. I just don't want to bother nobody. All right, let's talk about William Desmond Taylor. Oh, Mr. Taylor. All right, so he was born in Ireland to a pretty prominent family. His family were in, politics and whatnot. He moved to England to go to school. So he had, let me explain, he had an English accent. That's going to be important later. He had an English accent. So after school, he decided he was going to, come to America. And he wound up in New York, where he eventually started a little antique shop. He married the daughter of another man who had a string of antique shops, and they had a daughter named Ethel Daisy. Then he decided, well, I just don't think I want to be married anymore. And he abandoned his wife and his daughter. And he goes out to the West, right? He's going to go out to the West. He went to work on a dude ranch. And then he went, apparently, because it's real shaky where he went right after he left New York. He went up to the Yukon where they were paying him for gold. He ended up, I love you, Hondo. Hondo's my Virginia brother. He's my Virginia brother. All right, so he ended up panhandling for gold. He then makes his way to Hollywood, which was new. Not really, but films began to be made in New York. All right. That's where motion pictures, that's why it's called motion pictures, or movie, because they move. They were made in New York. Well, somebody said, you know what? California, they've got sunny weather all the time. Their weather's great. You don't have to break for snow. You don't have to break for a lot of rain. It's rugged terrain, but it's, right by an ocean. It's perfect. So that's when studios started coming out. That's when producers started coming out to Hollywood in droves. So that was the place to be. So he hold on. I didn't tell you this. At the time of his birth, his name was William Tanner William Dean Tanner. William Dean Tanner. I'm sorry. William Dean Tanner. That's his name. That's who he married. His wife, her name was whatever Dean Tanner. He left New York as William Dean Tanner. Popped back up in Hollywood, and his name was William Desmond Taylor. So he started, doing some movie work. He was in a couple of movies. He did a couple of Westerns. At the time, you could go out to Hollywood. You could be an actor, writer, producer, because they weren't there, right? You wrote your own stuff. You filmed your own stuff. So he got into that. He got into writing, directing, producing. And he became quite famous. I mean, he became quite famous. The war broke out because he was British, basically English. He, through Canada, enlisted in the army, didn't see any damn action at all, came back and picked up where he left off. So he became like, he did, they also had serials, not full movies. You had short little movies. The full-length film with, an hour or so came later. But you did like 30-minute serials that would appear in the movie theaters, and it was like a hot soap opera. A lot of them were in the South. That's where Mabel Normand, Charlie Chaplin, Roscoe Arbuckle, Fatty Arbuckle, hey Hazel, and that's where they started, and that's where silent films started. And then they started to do full lengths. William made his way through all the most important studios. It was like Vitagraph. It was just different ones. It was a lot of different production companies, but as studios, there were only a few. So he went to work after the war, at the different ones. He then he directed so many of the stars that they had back then. Again, Mabel Normand was probably one of the biggest stars there were. Roscoe Arbuckle, Fatty Arbuckle, huge star. Mabel Normand and Fatty Arbuckle did films together. I forgot how many. It's a lot. It's like 17. Hey, Miss Christie. Mabel Normand also did films with Charlie Chaplin. She actually was Charlie Chaplin's mentor when he came to Hollywood. So, and the reason I keep talking about Mabel Normand is because, one, she was amazing, but two, she took a hit on this that she never recovered from, ever. So we'll just do this. He became I think they elected him like director of the year or president of the Producers Club. He was, like I said, he was very successful. All right. Hold on, I'm turn this all over. I want to get it all. I think I got it all. His background. He became the head of his own production company at Paramount. So you had these big names starting to show up in the movie department. I'm going to go this way. All right. So, like I said, very successful. During this time, too, his wife and child were at a movie in New York, and the wife looked up on the screen and said, "Oh, hey, there's your dad. There your daddy." Can you imagine? Hadn't seen him. Why do you go to California and get into movies if you're trying to run away from your past? I never understand it, but he did it, and whatever. So let's talk about a little bit about what he had going on. He always had the fires rolling, right? He was always working. He was very modest. He had a very modest apartment, like townhouse. He could have been in a much bigger home. He just wasn't that kind of guy. So on the night of February 1st, he was, let's get, hold on, get those notes. Let me get that. The last person, he had a manservant named Mr. Peavy. Mr. Peavy, well, hey, Vicky, what was his, basically his, valet. He got him dressed. He kept his clothes clean, kept his house clean, and he cooked for him. Mr. Peavy would work from 7:30 to 7 at night. Loved his job. He'd been working there a while. William Taylor had a previous valet named Edward Sands. And Edward Sands, it turns out, was a career criminal. He had many names. And he stole, while Mr. Desmond Taylor was out filming on location, Edward Sands took his checkbook and started writing checks. He also began to steal his jewelry, and he ended up wrecking his car. So he fired Mr. Sands, obviously, tried to press charges on him, and hired Mr. Peavy. Mr. Peavy was a black man. He was a gay man, flamboyantly gay, and more than once had gotten busted for lewd behavior in a park. Why is my phone going off? I don't know. Mr. William Desmond Taylor had been to court. Hold on. Mr. William Desmond Taylor had been to court for Mr. Peavy once, and Mr. Peavy had gotten arrested again for the same thing. Was not really a big deal to Mr. William Desmond Taylor. He was going to go with him the next day. I think it was the next day, to court again, to say he is my, he's in my employ. He is an exemplary employee. I'm pretty sure this is not going to happen again, and I mean it this time, type of thing. I'm just trying to make sure nobody's house is on fire. Hold on. So, that night, on the 1st of February, William was at home. William Desmond Taylor was at home. Mabel Norman came to his home to pick up a book. Mabel was brilliant. Let me just say brilliant in what she did, right? She was her own writer, her own producer. She had her own production company. She was a woman. She was a brilliant mind, but her education wasn't what it should be. So William Desmond Taylor said, that's not a problem. I'm going to give you some books to read. These are the basics. That if you read these books, you can carry your conversation anywhere if you know the classics. So she came to his home to pick up a book. They were the best of friends. Mabel Norman was addicted to cocaine, and she loved gin. And she had been in rehab a couple of times. What rehab was in the 1920s, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what it was. But she would come home. There were drug dealers at every single studio there. Hey, boss, how you doing? They were there. And so William Desmond Taylor went up to him and said, listen, I'm going to turn you into the police if you don't get off this damn production. This is my production company. Get out. Stay away from Mabel. When she came out of rehab, they'd be at her back door, ready to deal. And she went by. All right. So she was bad on it. And she was an alcoholic. But because William Taylor loved her so much as a friend and vice versa, he said, I'm going to help you. We're going to get your self-esteem up. I mean, even back then, he knew an education usually helps, and when you don't feel great about yourself. So she came by to pick up a book. She got there about 6 or so. Stayed about an hour or so. Mr. Peavy left at 7, and he said she was still there. So finally she left. The neighbors saw her and William Desmond Taylor blowing kisses to each other as she drove away. Around 8 o'clock that night, times vary. Times vary. Because some people said, oh, at 8 o'clock we heard a car backfire. And a neighbor said, I heard a car backfire, and I saw a man walking out of William Desmond Taylor's home in a coat with the collar pulled up and a funny walk. Funny walk. Okay, not a problem. And other people said they heard the car backfire at 2 a.m. Mr. Peavy left the door open when he left because he was under the impression that Mabel was leaving right then. People say that's when the killer got in there. I'm not so sure. But anyway, the next morning, Mr. Peavy arrives to work at 7:30, opens the door, and William Desmond Taylor is laying on the floor. You know what I forgot to bring up? My pictures. Hold on. William Desmond Taylor was laying on the floor on his back in the house. And I'm going to show you that right now. I'm hopefully going to show you that right now. I did not put my photos in order, even though my daughter taught me how to. But why do I got to know? I'm just kidding. I don't know how to do it. I do not know how to do it, but I will. Let's try. Let's try. Present. Screen share. Screen share.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
That fucking phone is getting ready to go out of here. All right. Let me see if y'all can see that. Y'all can see that, right? Why is nothing there? Here we go. There I am again. What? Oh. Hold on, guys. I usually pull all this up before, and I was down here waiting to go on too. And I didn't do it. My fault. There we go. That is all right. There is one. That's the news. This was big news, but look up. I need y'all to look under the big type. Under it. Arbuckle jury still held up. All right. Fatty Arbuckle was on trial for murder at the time of this murder. I don't know which. I think this might have been the first. Fatty Arbuckle was tried 3 times on this same murder. 2 hung juries, and the last one unequivocally found him innocent and was so strong about it that they wrote a friggin' like essay or whatever. So we had that going on. We had Mr. Fatty Arbuckle on trial. There's William Desmond Taylor. Look at him. Ain't he cute? There you go. There's his apartment. His was the one on the left. But this is the Al Dorado, all one word. There he is in the army. Yeah, so handsome. All right, that's Mary Miles' mentor. Hold on, we're going to go through. There's some more. Y'all will know whoever these people are in a minute. Again, here's the... I mean, that's, he lived... They're nice, I guess, but I think, someone of his thing would have a... I don't know. That's where it is now. It got knocked down. All right. And this is one of the only, they had drawings back then. They didn't have photographs. Can you believe that? He was found like that, laying on his back in the middle of his living room. There's the cops. There's another. Okay. This is from the police, by the way. This is a police. This is evidence. I didn't do it. This is their evidence. So he was on his back. They did determine that, anyway, when Mr. Peavy found him, right? Mr. Peavy went running. throughout. Mr. Taylor's dead. Mr. Taylor's dead. Oh my God, Mr. Taylor's dead. Do you think the cops were the first to show up? No. The people from Famous Lansky Productions, where Mr. Taylor worked, they showed up and they started going through his stuff, his desks, his everything, and started burning stuff in the fireplace. Mabel Norman showed up and started going through everything, trying to find letters and whatnot that were from her. A crowd showed up into this home. But mind you, at this time, they didn't know he was murdered. They thought he just had a heart attack or whatever. They didn't know he was murdered quite yet. So, hey, Avery Love. So, yeah, it's old. Yeah, it's kind of, there it is. That's his house right now, Ross. When you go into Ross in California, you're stepping on a grave. I don't know why I found that so funny. So, all right. Disregard all these people. So there we are. Hey, Tammy. The police show up. Coroner shows up. They turn Mr. Taylor on the side and realize he's been shot in the stomach area, but from behind. Interesting. Who would kill Mr. Taylor? Mr. Taylor. Who would kill Mr. Taylor? Why? He was so successful. He was so beloved. He was so understanding. Why would someone kill him? Well, let's go through the suspects. So y'all want to go through the suspects? I'm going to read you first the news clips that came out right after the murder. Drug-crazed film queen is murder suspect. Hey, Kimberly, Mr. Farrow, hello. You done made me hungry with your food. All we had tonight was spaghetti. I threw it to crash. So this is from the New Orleans, whatever. Drug-crazed film queen's murder suspect. The film queen was again at a dope party, morose and embattled, according to police. That was from Chicago, the Chicago American. The film beauty may be assassin, half crazed with drugs she had taken. Now, y'all know right now that in Hollywood and anywhere else, even on YouTube, people will build you up, and they cannot wait to pull that chair out from under you and kick you right back down the street. Y'all know that. So, it could have been the drug dealers. Could have been the drug dealers that he told to stay away from his production company and from Mabel Norman. He did turn their names into the police. It could have been, I don't know. The first suspect, of course, is going to be Mr. Peavy, Mr. Henry Peavy. One, because he was a man of color. And I'm going to tell you what a newspaper, a credible newspaper, did to Mr. Peavy to try to get him to confess that he killed William Desmond Taylor. And they used, I'm going to tell you right now. So anyway, Mr. Peavy was the first suspect. I don't think I have a picture of Mr. Peavy. I don't. I thought I did, but I don't. Nope, that's me. So they talked to Mr. Peavy. They very quickly just counted him out. He was not the one. He's not the murderer. Wasn't in him. He really loved Mr. Taylor, and vice versa. But it is. In one of the books I read that the old valet came back, and he did one time, and he went straight to Mr. Taylor's house, and Mr. Peavy said, "You can't come in here." And Mr. Sands said, "Let me show you something," and went to, "Hey, Susan, I love you, baby." Went to a stash that had like lingerie and love letters and whatnot. But anyway, Mr. Peavy said, get the hell out of here. But there was a reporter from a prominent paper, and listen to what they did to this man and how stupid people were then. So they got Mr. Peavy and said, the police want to speak with you again. They took him to their offices, their newspaper offices, and put him in a room for 12 hours and wouldn't let him leave, him thinking he's at the police department or that he's there for the police department. So finally they let him go, and the woman, it's a woman reporter, and said, well, I'll drive you home, but she took him to where Mr. Taylor was buried, right? Hang with me here, people. Now, her and her cohorts had seen movies, right, that people of color were scared of ghosts. So they decided to take him to a cemetery. One of the men put a white sheet over his head, all right, popped out from behind a gravestone and said, I'm William Desmond Taylor. Tell them you killed me. Confess. To which time Mr. Peavy started laughing because the guy under the sheet had a Chicago accent. William Desmond Taylor had an English accent. And he said, get the hell out of here. That was embarrassing to write and embarrassing to tell, but it happened. So the second suspect, Mr. Edward Sands, the former valet who had prior convictions for embezzlement, forgery, a serial deserter from the U.S. Army. So he had several aliases. He worked as Taylor's valet and cooked for 7 months before he died. So the funny thing was, though, they couldn't find Mr. Edward Sands, and never, ever again was Mr. Edward Sands ever. I mean, he either changed his name, died, or whatever. What did happen was he did, while Taylor was alive, he mailed Taylor a pawn ticket from, I think, San Francisco, and had a real shitty little thing on it, but that's where some of his jewelry was. So he went and got the jewelry. But Mr. Sands was a thief. And I'm going to tell you what Mr. Taylor had on his body and in his home that was not touched. William Desmond Taylor had $78 in his wallet. That's the equivalent of $1,260 today. That was a lot of money. Hell, around here, it's a lot of money. You know, he had a 2-carat diamond ring on his hand, a sterling silver cigarette case on him, a very expensive Waltman pocket watch, and there were valuables all over the house. They weren't touched. So I don't think Mr. Sands, did it. Nothing was taken. Miss Mabel, the woman. Because she was the last person to see him alive. Miss Norman was one of the accused, as I just read to you. She was 5'0", right? The queen of comedy. Did her own stunts, which were amazing. Female writer, female director, producer. I told you she directed Charlie Chaplin. She starred in 167 short films and 23 full-length films. And she did not recover from this. Her career did not. She continued to make kind of, movies here and there, but the whole country thought she was the murderer because that's the way the press played it. Sorry, I'm dry. My mouth is dry. Now, let's talk about, there is a duo called Charlotte Shelby and Mary Miles' mentor. Mary Miles' mentor was a child star, right? She had, let's forward over here, let's find her. That's one thing of her. There she is. If y'all know anything about old Hollywood, Mary Pickford was the queen of Hollywood. Ringlets in her hair, played a full-grown ass woman, obviously, but always played the roles of children. And when she grew kind of out of that, she couldn't do it anymore. It was getting real obvious that she wasn't a child. Here's Mary Miles. You see the little locks of hair right there, and that's her mother, Charlotte Shelby. Now, Mr. Taylor had directed Mary Miles' mentor in 2 films that were very popular, right? Mary Miles' mentor was in love with William Desmond Taylor, and she wrote him endless love letters. And some people said she was like 19 at the time of his murder. Some people said they were having an affair because in his house, in a boot in his closet, was found a bunch of notes and a monogrammed nightgown. MMM. I guess if she was upside down, it'd be WWW, but it was MMM. So that started to bring his name into it. Really? You've been, you're dating basically a child, because in that time, in 1920s, you weren't really, you weren't an adult till 21. So, but it was never proven. He rebuffed her gently because she didn't have a father, but she had that damn mama. Let's talk about this damn mama. That mama. She had that damn mama. Now, Charlotte Shelby had 2 children. She had Mary Miles' mentor, and she had another daughter. The other daughter was quite the success on Broadway. So she had 2 children in the business, right? Tammy, yeah, but you're gotta wait. But money spoke volumes to a point. A Pimp Daddy. So it is said that, all right, so Mary Miles' mentor is living in a home that she effing bought. All right, her money bought that house. But this one right here ran it like a prison. Hey, Prissy. And so she, the night of the murder, locked Mary Miles' mentor in her room. Okay. Well, Mary climbed out the window, down the trellis, in her little sports car, took the hell off. Where'd she go? Don't know. We don't know. Don't know where she went. Could she have gone to Mr. Taylor's house? When I read you all something a little later, you'll certainly think, well, something. But Miss Shelby had an alibi. A guy, they were playing bridge or whatever, playing cards all night long, or up to the, she had a ironclad alibi. Nah, okay. Now, mind you, Miss Mary Miles' mentor had already been married once and pregnant. And Miss Shelby saw that both of them were terminated, the marriage and whatnot. So her mother wasn't going to give her any leeway no more. You could tell Miss Mary Miles' mentor was wild. But she was wild. She was a damn 19-year-old kid, star in Hollywood. Hello. So I'm not reading my notes. Some people said that William Desmond Taylor was gay. Other people said that he was after this child. Hey, hippie. Some people said that it was not just one piece of lingerie or whatever. It was several. That he had all these conquests. That wasn't legal, and neither was gin. I'm telling you, Hollywood was I want to say it was a social experiment on probably the way the rest of this country was. I mean, I mean, bathtub gin killed how many alcoholics or made them blind. It's a wonder Mabel Norman didn't turn out blind. But anyway, so let's talk about this thing right here, and I shouldn't be mean, but I am. So both of her daughters were, like I said in there, she was domineering, manipulative. She threatened one director with a gun who had made a pass at her daughter about 6 months before this incident. That don't just happen. I'm reading it on. I'm making sure I'm right. Okay, so also when William Desmond Taylor was shot with a very odd, very not common gun and ammo. Was not normal, not the regular kind. Well, it turns out that Charlotte Shelby owned that odd gun, an odd gun like the one used, and the rather odd bullets. We know that because Mary Miles' mentor, a couple days before this, threatened to kill herself and had the gun, was locked in the room, but she'd already gotten her mother's gun. And after her mother locked her in it for a little while, she pulled the trigger. Somebody called the police, not anybody in the house, but. So what did Charlotte Shelby do? Well, Charlotte Shelby went back to her home in Alabama, and she went out there to the bayou. Yep. And she threw that gun and that ammo in the bayou of Alabama. That's weird. That's weird. Now, been to the 9, went to that, went to all that, went to that. Now, the police stayed on Miss Shelby for quite a lot of years, I'm going to tell you. Quite a lot of years. She was accused. They would come and talk to her. Hey, Lily. They'd come and talk to her. They would insinuate that, charges were coming. And they never did. So finally, I think about 10 years later, she was exonerated. And I can't believe it, but she was. Now, right after that one man gave Miss Shelby her alibi, huge amounts of money started coming his way for no apparent reason at all. And they didn't stop coming until she was exonerated. And then screw you, what are you going to do, tell? So that was odd. That was pretty odd. So there's suspects. Nobody was ever arrested. But, and let's talk about what was going on at the time. I want to tell you what's going on at the time. If you like old Hollywood and you like all that, let me tell you what was going on at the time. We had a lot of scandals going on at this time that the American public were just not exactly, Tammy, exactly. And she also bribed Bernard Fitz, who was the district attorney at the time. And I can tell you a lot about Bernard Fitz because he figures into a lot of these scandals and stuff. He figures into a lot of them. Mr. Fitz's name. Hold on. There we go. Now, and I have this go to Aftermath. I have to go to, let me find my Aftermath. Because I've told you pre-code, post-code, all this codes. I've got written notes that are the same notes that I've written. I got to stop that shit. So we have pre-code Hollywood, Pre-code Hollywood it lasted until about 1934, 1935. After all of these different scandals, you had Roscoe Arbuckle, you had Mary Miles' mentor, you had Norma Desmond, you had, let's see, Jean Eagles. Jean Eagles was a little known. She was a stage actress. She was Roxy in Chicago. She was Sadie Thomas in Rain. Um, she came to Hollywood and she made The Letter. And if y'all know any of The Letter, Miss Betty Davis remade The Letter because she was in awe of Jean Eagles, as was Joan Collins and Joan Crawford, and she remade Rain. So, those two actresses were heavily influenced by Jean Eagle. But Jean Eagle was an addict and an alcoholic. And addicts and alcoholics back then just didn't make it very long. You just didn't have a lot of, you didn't have a lot of. She died. She died early. She died, I think, 39 years old. So then you have Olive Thomas. Now, Olive Thomas was a very popular. She started on Broadway. She came out to Hollywood. Huge star, right? Just beautiful girl. Let's see if we can find her. That's Olive Thomas. Now, Olive Thomas, like, is a hugely popular actress. She ended up marrying, I mentioned her before. She ended up marrying Mary Pickford's brother, Jack. All right. They were both drug addicts and alcoholics. There was nothing anybody could do about it. They just were, and that's how it went. Well, they went to Paris, the two of them, for a little, late honeymoon. And this is so sad. Olive got up in the middle of the night and went into the bathroom. And I don't know what she thought she was drinking, but she drank Jack's syphilis medication, which was mercury dichloride. And it took her 5 days to die. She was 25 years old when they brought her back to America. The people lined the streets of New York when her hearse went by, and that was in what year was that? 1916, 1960. It was in the 1920s. And then you had Thomas Ince. If y'all have ever seen The Cat's Meow, that's a good movie, directly based on this event. William Randolph Hearst owned a lot of newspapers. And we've talked about Randolph Hearst before when we talked about Dorothy Kilgallen. She worked for William Randolph Hearst. And William Ince was a huge producer. He is the one that created the studio system. It did not exist before Thomas Ince. I beg of you to go and Google Thomas Ince. And by the time you get finished reading his accomplishments in life, you'll be like, I'm, maybe the same age, a little older. I ain't done shit. But William Randolph Hearst and him were going to go into business together. So on the weekend of Mr. Ince's birthday, William Randolph Hearst said, hey, why don't we go on a little cruise on my yacht? You want to? The Oneida. He was like, sure. He didn't bring his wife. I think he did bring his girlfriend. On the boat were Marion Davies, which was William Randolph Hearst's companion. He was married, Catholic, so he wouldn't divorce his wife, but him and Marion Davies had been together since she was a whip of a kid. She was on. Charlie Chaplin was on. Eleanor, the fuck's that bitch name? Eleanor somebody. She was a damn writer. Luella Parsons was on, who after this cruise here got a lifetime contract with William Randolph Hearst. That's weird. So William Randolph Hearst did not allow a lot of liquor and stuff like that. It was you had 2 glasses. Hey, Brantley, you had 2 glasses. That was about 2 or 3. That's all you needed. So it was after dinner, and Mr. Ince had a ulcer, and he drank champagne and he ate something else with dinner, and it really set him off. Right. Here's story number 1. That old Brantley, welcome to this reading room. I love you. Yeah, I love that movie, Brantley. So the first story is that it ruptured and he had a heart attack and all kinds of stuff. And he was taken off the boat alive, and was moved a couple of times and just didn't make it. Just didn't make it. And that's the story that his wife tells, but why does she tell it? I don't know why she tells it. She might tell it because it's true, or she might tell it because William Randolph Hearst said, let me take care of you. What is supposedly what happened is William Randolph Hearst was convinced that Marion Davis and Charlie Chaplin were having an affair. Charlie Chaplin was in between child brides. We'll go to that in a second. And were they having an affair? I don't know. But William Randolph Hearst got up. She was not there. He went along the boat. He saw her talking to someone, right? So she was facing him. And he's shocked because he thought it was Charlie Chaplin. And why would you shoot Charlie fucking Chaplin? Hey, Eels, I love you. But he ended up killing Thomas Ince, supposedly. That's a story that went all over America. The heart attack, boring. The story that went all over was William Randolph, and especially if it was not a William Randolph Hearst newspaper, it really went out. All right. So that's another thing that happened. We have Wallace Reed. Okay. He died in 1923. This happened here. Mr. Ince happened in 1924. 1923, we have Wallace Reed. He's a pretty beautiful man. Let me go find him. He's really beautiful. Nope. There's Wallace Reed. He was a stuntman, an action figure, like one of the first action figures, right? He could do it all. He raced cars. He was an actor. He was a singer. In fact, he sang so well that a noted opera star told him, "Let me take you and let me get you to a teacher, and you won't have to worry about this movie stuff anymore." So he didn't want to do that. So he was pretty popular. So and you look at him, he's cute. He was a matinee idol. Well, he was in a train wreck. He was in a pretty bad train wreck, and it messed him up a lot. And he became addicted to morphine. They kept putting him in sanatoriums, not sanitariums. Sanatoriums are completely different. I learned. He would, it must have been a horrible, horrible detox. And then he would come out and do it again. He died in a sanatorium, basically. It finally killed him. His wife came out after that and was really trying to educate people on drugs and whatnot. So we lost him. Drugs. There was no way around it. All right. Then let's get back to our little Roscoe. I beg of you, if you want to know about the scandal involving Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, read the book Room 1219. It's a really good book. And it explains what happened to Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle and Virginia Rapé, who was not a whore, not any of the things that have been said about her, that she was none of them. She was none of them. So Roscoe, he got the first contract, $1 million contract he signed. $3 million over 3 years. This was before income tax. I think Mabel Norman was making $5,000 before a week before income taxes. Gloria Swanson, Sunset Boulevard fame, she was making $5,000 a week before income taxes back in the day. That's why when these people fail, welcome back. When these people fail and they just spent that money like it was always going to be there. And there's a really good book called Dangerous Curves Around Hollywood Heels, HEELs. Heels, you need to read it. And it's about these silent film actresses who were so high on the hog, right? And then they didn't make it through to the talkies. They had accents or whatnot, and they didn't make it. So Roscoe was celebrating another big landmark deal in September 1921. Him and some friends drove to San Francisco. They stayed at the St. Francis Hotel, and Roscoe was in room 1219. There was a huge party. Women showed up. Women showed up. But the next day, there was a woman, Virginia Rapé, who was in really bad shape, moaning and groaning and all that. The hotel doctor came in and said, "Oh, she's just drunk," gave her a shot. She only did 2 more days, right? And Laura Lee, so she was finally taken to the hospital, and by then she was septic. She had it was something with her. She had chronic bladder infections and stuff like that, and it just becomes septic. This time it didn't. Well, the woman that was with her told police, no. Roscoe went in there and raped her with a, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, with a champagne bottle. So he went to trial on the first time, September 11th, 1921. And that lasted through December 4th, 1921. Deadlock jury. Now, listen how fast these things are turning around. It's trial number 2, January 11th, 1922. That's weeks later. That lasted till February 3rd, deadlock jury. Then, March 13th, 1922 to April 12th, 1922, that's when the jury said, this man is so innocent and has been railroaded, but guess what? No more contract. No more contract. No more $3 million contract. It's gone. Your production company, it's gone. Another thing, when this scandal started in 1921, the theaters all took out Roscoe's films, Fatty Arbuckle's films, which meant what? Mabel Norman's films, because she was in there with him. So that's one of the things that started killing her career. All those films they made together were now in the garbage. Now, oh yeah, it still does. And Heels, I get so angry. Even like Virginia Rapé, she was a designer. She was like on the cusp of being people loved her designs where she was from. She designed clothes, hats. She was fairly successful. She had a man that was in love with her, loved her. Hey, honey bunny. That loved her so much and got her plot. Hold on. What did you get addicted to, girl? Oh, it's easy to do. No, it's easy to do. A lot of people are addicted to it. So anyway, this killed Roscoe's career. He had to start writing under a pseudonym, and direct. I mean, he was done for. The biggest, pardon the pun, the biggest star in Hollywood was no more. And for nothing. It was a lie a woman told because she thought she was going to have time to get Roscoe to pay her off. But when the studios, mind you, obviously got wind of this, I told y'all before, there were no fixers like there became in the 40s and 50s, maybe even the 30s. There were no fixers around to get to the scene, sterilize it, pay everybody off, and get the hell out. So I guess she thought she was going to have time to get something out of him. But The studio said, "Hey, listen, we got moral clause." They would put moral clauses in contracts. They started to. We don't have to pay him anything for the work he's done. Can't use it, but because of this clause in his contract, we don't have to pay him. So you cut his money off because I mean, everyone thought he was a murderer. You have Charlie, let's go to Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin loved to marry 13 and 14-year-old girls. He did it his whole life. So he married his second wife. She told him she was pregnant, Lita Gray. Sorry, Lita Ford was a singer. And she wasn't pregnant, but he had to go and marry her. This was right after the Ince affair, by the way. He had to marry her. They did end up having 2 children, 2 boys. But then she wanted a divorce, and she went to court and talked about all of the unnatural acts he wanted her to do, that he was horrible, he was mean. She won $800,000, the largest divorce settlement of the time, and it was the equivalent of 11 million now. Now we know that's not shit now, and So we had Charlie. We had Barbara Lamar. Let's go see. There's Barbara Lamar. Oh no, that's her. Barbara. Let me find Barbara. Hold on. I was reading a book on Barbara, but I had to stop with it for a second because Barbara Lamar died very young. She was hell on fucking wheels. I mean, hell on fucking wheels. Now I have Lita. I know, Lita. I know. Sorry. I love the way men did back then too. And I would love it. Hey, Beholden Jean. Hey, Brenda. I'm sorry I missed y'all coming in. I would love to throw on them cats. Well, she got little crazy eyes. When she was younger, and I'm going to say mid-teens, she got caught in Hollywood, and the judge said, "You were just too beautiful. The girl too beautiful." So she got sent back up with her parents up in Upper California. Here she is, right, with Ramon Navarro, another film star who was murdered by 2 brothers who were hustlers. William Navarro was gay, and he picked up 2 hustlers, but this wasn't back then. This was in the 60s, 70s. There she is there. So she came back when she was old enough, and she became this huge star. Miss Barbara Lamar. There she go again. Look at her. Oh, what are you doing there in the floor, baby? That's Jean Eagle. That's the one I was telling you all about before, Jean Eagle. Look at her. That's such a beautiful photograph. Can you imagine? All right, anyway, so Barbara Lamar. Who, Barbara, girl? She was wild as a buck. She was married, let me see, so like 5 times. It might be more than that. Let me see. It's 4 or 5 times. And she was a pretty good actress, I guess. I would too, Avery, for just a little bit. Just give me a week. I just want to live there a week. I want to walk by them. I want to know who they are. But she was drinking and drugging. She would not sleep. She was always on a diet. If she wasn't filming, she would do all that drinking and put the weight on. So she would do cocaine and whatnot to starve it off. Back and forth, back and forth. She started marrying at a very young age, like 13. 13. One man killed himself because he married her and he wasn't divorced, and he got thrown in jail and he killed himself for her. Any man that was anywhere involved with her, they were smitten to the end of their life. But what are you gonna do? I don't know. So she ended up dying. She got the wait a minute. So I've lost my word. It's my long haul COVID. Hold on, it'll come to me. She got a reputation, and those reputations, it does get out into the mainstream media, some way, somehow. But she ended up dying of starvation. She went and adopted a son um, somewhere, and we're pretty sure it was her son. She just wasn't married at the time. And an actress friend of hers, it was a name I can't remember, and it ended up taking him, but she died at 29 of anorexia and alcoholism. So these were just some of those scandals. Trust me, there were more. If we sat around and talked about them, I would be here all night. She had that effect on women, Renda. So we're going to get to the aftermath of all of this. And I have it here, our pre-code. We got code. I'm going to tell you what code means. If y'all don't know. Aftermath. There you go. Nope, that is my, hold on. All right, that's my suspect file. Hold on. I got to keep it together because if I don't. And then we have the aftermath, the scandal part. There's this and this. Okay, we're good. The night of the murder. All right, we got that. And we have aftermath. If you read these books on William Desmond Taylor, you will know.
Not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan. I have, Renda. Yeah, I did. I saw it. That was going to be built in the crappy part of town, even when they were building it. I don't know why they built it there. All right, so the aftermath. In the 1920s, up until the Depression, excuse me, I mean, people were hustling. And a woman in her, there was a woman, I'm sorry, named Margaret Gibson. And you're saying, why is she talking about here now? It's all over. No, it's not. In 1923, Margaret Gibson was arrested on federal felony charges involving a nationwide blackmail scam, extortion, and prostitution. A man told authorities that he had paid Gibson $1,155 to avoid prosecution for violating the Mann Act. The Mann Act, it was a act against or a law against white slavery. So he paid her all this money. And so she was also connected to two more convictors of blackmail. What she would do was she got $10,000 from an Ohio banker. What she would do was people would make ads or whatever, and she would meet these men in a hotel, motel, whatever. And her companion, who was a male, would bust in, and they would steal all the money, and they would say, "All right, you don't tell nobody because they look through his shit. We're gonna tell your wife," and they'd run off with the money. That was basically her scam. When they could get away with it, I'm gonna show you her. That's her. That's Margaret. So the bank guy for $10,000, he dropped the charges. She got the hell out of Hollywood real quick after that. She fled to Singapore. And while in Singapore, she married a man, and they apparently had a good life, And then the war came around, and a bomb was dropped on his factory in Singapore, and he died. So she came back over here. Oh, this was 1923 that she was arrested. The stuff she did before, I mean, it took a good while for them to catch him, because nothing scares the hell out of somebody like, I'm gonna tell you, I got your name, I've got your address. So, but listen, I'm gonna put the books that y'all need to read, because it's so very well. It's those ringlets, heels in the air that like Mary Pickford had, and all them, and it made them look childlike. these actresses, and that's where they would make their money because you were the you were the Mary Pickford. How many damn train tracks was she on before whoever came and saved her from the train? It's those friggin' ringlets that they did devil. So anyway, she got killed, and in 1949 she moves back to Hollywood. She buys her a little house, and she lives off a widow's pension. Almost never left the house, and all of her groceries delivered. She hung around her garden. She made sure she was insulated, kind of. And she made, friends with, loved old Hollywood, especially the best. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about, Barbara Lamar. Brenda, if that was the one. So, she ended up dying. And before she had a heart attack. And I don't remember when. Did I write down when? 1949. Anyway, no, I didn't. She had a heart attack, and her neighbor came running, right? And she said, "Get me a priest. Get me a priest. I've got to have a priest." And they tried to find a priest, before it took the ambulance 45 minutes to get there. And the night before that, a couple nights before that same neighbor had been sitting with her while they were watching a little movie in her house. And a news, like investigative report about Mr. William Desmond Taylor came out, and she said, "Oh God, I did that. I thought they forgot about it." The neighbor chalks it up to her being a little out there. So, but anyway, a priest didn't come, but she did. And I think this was the 70s, end up confessing, "I shot him. I shot William Randolph Taylor." You say, why? Well, she knew William Randolph Taylor. Back in the 20s, she knew him. And she had been busted one time at a Chinese brothel. And she changed her name. And she changed her name so often after any scandal, but she became tainted. I mean, you can only change your name so many times in the same town. And she would come to William Taylor because they started as actors together. And, he was quite big. And he wouldn't help her anymore. He couldn't help her anymore. What was he going to do? There was nothing. She kept getting caught. And there was nothing he could do. And supposedly, she shot him because he wouldn't help her. That could be. That could very well be. I don't know, but it could be. So let's get to these aftermaths. Here's the aftermath of this murder helped put a huge nail in the coffin of Hollywood, and because by no means was Hollywood an innocent place. It was quite the opposite. But yeah, I'll say it killed on Hollywood. So how did Mabel Normand end up? Well, she made a couple of. I'm gonna kick that phone in a goddamn street. She made it through 1926. She married Lou Cody, who was her friend, but they lived in separate homes, but they stayed married. Whatever. Mabel had tuberculosis when she was 7, and she got it again. Hold on, let me find. Hold on. Where the hell Mabel at? Mabel, where you at? All right, anyway. She contracted it again, and she was put into a sanatorium, which is different from a sanitarium. And she did not make it. She died on February 23, 1930. So I think she was still under 30 years old, but maybe not. Mary Miles' mentor. She sued her mother in 1925 for an accounting of her money. That was settled out of court in 1927. So no one knows what happens to that. In 1957, Mary married a real estate developer. Um, they remained married until his death. He was quite successful, so she lived comfortably. In 1981, though, she was severely beaten in a home invasion. They stole $300,000 worth of jewelry, antiques, china, and you know, pretty bad. And she died in 1957 while living. Oh, this is other one. Let me see. Mary died at the age of 82 in 1984. Can you believe that? Um, Miss Charlotte ended up dying when she lived with Mary at the end of her life. She died in 1957. And then we have Henry Peavy. I've always had a soft spot before. I don't know why. But he died in 1931 in a San Francisco asylum where he'd been hospitalized for syphilis related dementia. That's the same thing that Al Capone died of. So that's one thing, Mr. Peavy, you could say you died. So let's talk about that Hollywood Code, 1927 to 1934, the Motion Picture Code, and the Hayes. It's also called the Hayes Code because he was I don't know what he was, and they would just say, listen, try not to do a lot of sexual innuendo, try not to do a lot of romantic and sexual relationships between a white and a black person. Just telling you what it says. Do mild profanity, just nothing big. It was just kind of stay away from promiscuity, drug use, drinking, because it was prohibition. Homosexuality, probably shouldn't talk about. A lot of violence, let's not bring it up. Infidelity, that doesn't happen, so let's not do it. Promiscuity. But of course, the systems and the directors and the writers were going to do what they were going to do. And they did. And that's why if you hear of a pre-code movie, that's a movie made before 1934. And they're great movies. And they're really great movies. And but in 1934, the government stopped and said, you're not going to do this anymore. We're going to take over all of the ratings here, and you're not going to be able to do that anymore. This is just, you're putting out filth. The whole world's going to hell. So they started to run the standards. Yeah, twin beds. Yeah. And that did not, you know what? That system didn't release until like the 60s. The 60s. It stayed there 30 years. And that's what all this I'm not going to call it depravity because it's life. And those people, those actors and those actresses, and you talk about them being wildfire, right? But I mean, they were in the infancy of an industry that probably is, I don't think any of us could, I don't think any of us right now could think about how much money movies have generated from silent all the way to now. I don't think that that's an infinitesimal number. So, and these people were there at the beginning, and they were trailblazers. I mean, Mabel Norman was a trailblazer. And it ended so badly for them. And a lot of the silent film actors too. Valentino would not have been able to adjust to sound because he had such a thick Italian accent. He wouldn't have been able to do it because they said it was very thick. There's Clara Bow. Clara Bow is the it girl. She was in all of these. I read her biography too, and the things that were said about her some of them were true. Hey, Joey, she was named she was named in somebody's divorce. It was a doctor that saw her after she had her appendix out, and she did have an affair with him, and she was named in the divorce, and she did pay it off, and um, even Jean Harlow was stories about abound, but here we are today. Here we are today. That's why I stay fascinated in all old Hollywood and all the scandals because, look, I could put this thing up. William Desmond Taylor. Put it in my folder. Put it in my drawer. I'm done with him. Wow. So I think we've gone full circle in our murder mystery because we've been to Manhattan in the 60s. We've been to, let's see, Springfield in the 80s. We've been to what is it? Which one is it? The Texas one, the Texas Trio. Whatever, we've been there. Now we've come back to Hollywood. Let me show y'all what I want to do now. I've already done, hold on. Don't look down my shirt. Don't look down my shirt. I've already done I've already done Thelma Todd before. This is a book that I bought. I bought a book about her. Now, this is an unsolved one too. And this has got a lot of people involved, like gangsters and a lot of stuff. This book, though, it was a testimony of a death, and it is more of the like actual. Why are the letters so small? When my glasses get in, I'll hit this. But more of the science in her death. Her death, if y'all don't know, she was a pretty big star, and it was right before Christmas, and she was going out for the night, and she lived in a beautiful home. She had a little roadside cafe, and she was going out for the night. There was a party for somebody at I think the Brown Derby, and her boyfriend slash live-in, I don't know what you want to call it, told her, because she always came home drunk, don't come home drunk. You come home at 12 o'clock and don't be drunk, whatever. And she said, okay, right. Well, she didn't come home at 12. And so that was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or was it Saturday, Sunday, Monday? Monday, the maid showed up, right? And she would always, you'd have to see the setup. It was 100 and some steps to get. Anyway, she opened up the garage because she would always pull the woman's car into the front of the cafe. Well, there's Thelma. Obviously, been there since the weekend. She had her fur on. I don't think the car was still running. She was laid over in front. She was missing teeth and a broken rib. So she pulled in there, and somebody had turned and locked the door. But then they said it was suicide. Well, how are you going to lock the freaking door? And then they said, no. She just got really cold because he had locked the door to her house. She got in her car. She kept it running in the thing to keep warm. Accident, suicide, or murder. There's big cases for all. This one's not as easy as the rest of them have been. Thelma Todd's not as easy as the rest of them. The accident, suicide, or murder. It's, yeah. I do two heels. I love them. And one of my favorite is Coco Chanel, but I love all of them. And I've got so many. And I just found another stash of books the other day that I have so many. And I've got my little library there that my husband built, but I mean, I'm going to need another one. I'm going to need bookshelves somewhere else because I have yeah. Well, all right, I can tell y'all that a friend of mine killed himself in a car in a garage. I hate to talk about this, but I want everybody to know that getting in a car, on a running car in a garage, if you think that you're just going to go to sleep, that's not what happens at all. Your body doesn't let that happen. You begin to, most people try to get out. Most people. or they, it's not a painless death. Oh, Hemingway. I see. I've got a Hemingway to read. Funny you should say that. Um, what else? There's a bunch over there. There's a bunch over there. I buy them. I go to the Goodwill and I'll buy them. I'll buy them used. I used to buy them used on Amazon. I didn't have money, and I still don't have money. But I do have Amazon Prime now, so usually it works out that the book, when you buy it used, they ship it. You don't get free shipping. So usually by the time you get how much the book costs plus the shipping, you just buy it from Amazon with no free shipping. I love if anybody's read any of Carrie, yep, what the hell is her name? Yep, Carrie, the one that died, Carrie Fisher. She's got some really fun books. I like her books. I've read them all. So anyway, I'm wrapped up in just right in my under my time, which I like to get done at 10:30 because I think an hour and a half is enough, and I've timed it perfectly. You love his books, his bio. I love his books too. Love them. I love to get lost. That's just what I do. I love to get lost in a book, and when you read those books, you get in there and like you close it for the night, and you miss them. You miss them, and fiction books. But now, see, I only read really biographies too. Hope, and things like this stuff, like my book upstairs that's about the crime, the murder of the pastor and his girlfriend, and it started the country's true crime fascination. That's what I wanted to read next on my book club. But they want to read. I think people want to read like a Stephen King, and I'll do that. I mean, I'm just not big on them, but it doesn't mean I won't enjoy it. Me Too Heals his Old Man in the Sea. I got Love and War at the damn Goodwill. I remember for $1. I got Love and War for $1. I felt bad, but I did it. I don't feel bad. If you're dumb enough to donate your books, I'll be dumb enough to pay $1 for them. Trust me, believe. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you. Maybe I should open up my phone for calling. Y'all, we can use my Google number. Just kidding. Go do what y'all got to go do. And I'm going to go and do what I got to do. And I thank y'all for being here. I really do. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if you ever have somebody that, an unsolved murder, but I'll tell you about my new channel that I made, but it's going to be an upload channel, which means I have to learn how to edit. And I've always said I was going to learn to edit, never have, because I have two channels, A Sign of the Crimes. It's true. Hold on, I'm still live. We what? All right, A Sign of the Crimes. That's one channel. And Dinner and a Murder, where I'm going to cook dinner probably from the time period of the murder and talk about a murder. Dinner and a murder. So we'll give you recipes. You can learn how to do it. And in between that, we'll just talk about the murder. So that, I think, will be fun. I thought about that in the shower yesterday. I did. So that means I got to start editing. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I love you very much for coming. So thank you for supporting me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that there's people that are like-minded with me who like old stuff and drama that doesn't involve us. So have a good night. Have a safe night. Have a warm night. And I will see you very, very, very soon. Bye.